but they begin to hear the words of Professor Gerald play, and then the prototype emerges. The bio-lizard in full maturity, who harbors the wish of Professor Gerald to eliminate all life on Earth as revenge for Maria. The events of the last story is by far the most epic.
So I just discussed the hero side of the story and the villain side of the story. But now it's time to discuss the last story and see how everything ties together.
50 years ago on the Space Colony Ark. These words are the most important in order to understand the history of what's about to happen next. But to do this, I'm going to borrow intel from two games. The first being Shadow the Hedgehog, and the other being Sonic X Shadow Generations, or more specifically, Shadow Generations. Professor Gerald Robotnik was a benevolent scientist who served on board the Space Colony Ark. With him was his granddaughter Maria Robotnik, Eggman's cousin. Shocking. Like there's no family resemblance whatsoever between the two of them. Maria was ill, so Professor Gerald began experiments on chaos control to save his granddaughter. This was what led to the creation of the prototype of the ultimate life form called the bio-lizard. Although a failed experiment, the bio-lizard survived, which is very important in this tale. With no other solutions in developing the ultimate life form, an alien by the name of Black Doom offered to assist Professor Gerald on some Palpatine shit and gives Professor Gerald a sample of his blood. With this, Professor Gerald created Shadow and managed to save Maria's life. Why Professor Gerald ended up making a hedgehog is beyond me. But with this, Professor Gerald created Shadow and managed to save Maria's life. However, there was a catch. Promise time. Shadow, who was named by Maria, must assist Black Doom and his army in the conquest of Earth. Professor Gerald agreed, but began to work behind the scenes on the creation of a weapon strong enough to destroy Black Doom and his army on board what is called the Black Comet. This weapon was called the Eclipse Cannon. However, Gunn caught a glimpse of Professor Gerald's plans and invaded the Space Colony Ark, arrested Professor Gerald, and sought the capture of Project Shadow. Maria attempted to save Shadow by getting him into an escape pod to Earth. And the last thing Shadow heard was Maria's promise, but that promise became muddled because of gunfire. A gun soldier shoots Maria from behind, killing her right before Shadow's eyes as he was about to be shot out into space towards Earth. Damn, what a story. Gunn captured Shadow on Earth, and upon Shadow's awakening, his primary motivation was avenging the death of Maria.
But as we would soon find out, that's not the only person who shared that motivation.
Now, in the present, warning alerts are being blasted across the Space Colony Ark with a video message from the late Professor Gerald Robotnik, being his last journal entry on the instrument of his revenge for the loss of his granddaughter, which was the cause of his insanity. The solution was Project Shadow. However, Tails' plan to stop the Eclipse Cannon had backfired due to Professor Gerald's program. So everybody but Shadow teamed up to put a stop to the Eclipse Cannon. While everyone was doing their part in the bowels of the Space Colony Ark,
I actually remember this long ass stage.
Amy went to Shadow to beg for his help. That's when Shadow fully remembered Maria's last words, her wish for Shadow to protect the people of Earth. Now, Shadow was ready to be the hero he was always intended to become. Sonic and Knuckles arrived to the core of the Eclipse Cannon to use the Master Emerald to stop the Chaos Emeralds. But they begin to hear the words of Professor Gerald play, and then the prototype emerges. The bio-lizard in full maturity, who harbors the wish of Professor Gerald to eliminate all life on Earth as revenge for Maria. That's when Shadow appears to fight the bio-lizard. Shadow wins, and Knuckles uses the Master Emerald to stop the Chaos Emeralds. However, things weren't going to be that easy. The bio-lizard uses chaos control to warp outside the Space Colony Ark and hurled the station to the earth to kill a hell of a lot of people.
Our only hope now rests on Sonic and Shadow. Or should I say,
Super Sonic and Super Shadow. This final battle is the most memorable battle ever. The two super hedgehogs. And some badass music. Just listen. Okay, that's enough. They beat BioLizard for good and used Chaos Control to stop the Space Colony Ark from crashing to the Earth. However, Shadow used up all his power and could no longer maintain his super state. Shadow falls to the Earth presumed to be dead, and the heroes along with Rouge and Eggman mourn his death, especially Sonic. That's our story.
So now how does this story fare against the new movie?
This next video will discuss some of the basics of what you will expect to see.